This lesson, we are going to develop one Spring Boot based CRUD application, and this CRUD operations would be exposed as REST APIs. So stepwise, first we would do the project setup and add the required dependencies. Then we would implement the CRUD operations, create, read, update and delete, and we would develop the necessary code, whether it is repositories, services or controllers. Then we will configure the H2 database, insert sample data, and finally, we'll perform the testing with Postman. Let's get started. I have my Eclipse opened, and if I show you the version, this is the version I have 2024-09, and in my system JDK 17 is set up. First thing, we need to set up our JDK or JRE correctly. For that, go to Window, Preferences. Under Java, we have this installed JREs. By default, it is showing me the bundle JDK that comes with Eclipse. I'm not going to use this one. Instead, I'm going to add the JDK, which is JDK 17 here in Eclipse, and I'm going to use it in my project. Click on Add, select Standard VM, Next. I'm going to point to the JDK location where my JDK 17 is set up. This is the folder where JDK 17 is present. Clicking on Select Folder, click on Finish, and I'm going to select this JDK 17 instead of this default JRE. One thing you can see, the selected JRE does not support compiler compliance level of 21. By default, the compiler compliance level is 21. I need to change it to 17 also. Click on Compiler, click Apply, change this to 17. Click Apply, apply and close. Now, first thing, we are going to perform the project setup. Project setup, and here we will use the Spring Boot tool suite plugin present in my Eclipse. And during creation of the project, we would add certain dependencies. These are Spring Boot Starter Web, JPA, H2, and the test. So in Eclipse, I have the Spring Boot tool suite or the STS plugin already installed. If I show you over here, under Eclipse Marketplace, under search, if I type Spring space boot and click on go, this Spring Tools 4, which is the STS tool suite, is shown here. I have this one already installed. In case you have not installed this, you can click on the install button that would be appearing over here. So either you can install this plugin inside Eclipse, or you can use the Spring Tool Suite IDE as well. Clicking on cancel, click on File, New, select Other, type Spring, select this option, Spring Starter Project. Next, here I can enter the details for a new project. Let me provide the name. I have provided the name as Spring CRUD REST. Type I am changing to Maven. Packaging is jar, Java version keeping 17, language is Java. Let me change the group and the package. This is the group, keeping the artifact as spring-crud-rest, version description as is, package I am changing to org.spring-crud-rest. Click next. Let me add the dependencies required, typing web, selecting Spring Web, typing JPA, selecting Spring Data JPA, typing H2. I have this H2. Click on next, click finish. Now the project is created. Let me just expand. Open the pom.xml. The parent is added over here. This version is 3.4.0. Let me get rid of this part, URL and SCM. I don't need this. I have Spring Boot Starter JPA, Starter Web, H2 database, scope is runtime, and the starter test is also added while I added this Spring Starter Web. Just going to check the properties of this project. Right click, Properties, Java build path, libraries. If I click on edit, it is actually pointing to the JDK 17 which I added. We can change it to this one also, workspace default JRE. Either way, it should work. Click on Java compiler, click apply. This is also 70, so it's fine. Clicking on apply and close, yes. So our project setup and adding of starter dependencies is complete. The next tasks would be development of the CRUD operations. For this, first I'll create one entity class named product, then associated repository interface would be created. After repository service layer, the service class product service should be created. Finally, a REST controller would be created where it would be using the service layer for this CRUD operations, whether it is create, read, update, delete. And for all these four options, different REST types would be used: post, get, put, and delete. Let me quickly create the package and the basic classes. First, I'm going to customize this Project Explorer view a little bit. Clicking on this filter, uncheck start.resources, going to content, unchecking Java elements, clicking on OK. Expanding source and Java. First, I'm going to create the entity. Control N, selecting class, next, class name product, package, I'm adding model, clicking on finish. So first thing I need to add is the entity annotation. This should be from jakarta.persistence. Now I would add standard attributes, ID, name, description. I'm not going to type all the lines in this lesson. The necessary parts I'll just add over here and explain. So as it is going to be used by the JPA, we should have a non-argumented constructor for this product. Then I'm going to add the required field. One is ID. This would be the primary key. So I'm marking this as ID, and for the generated value, the generation type would be entity. Press Ctrl Shift O to resolve the imports. Selecting this jakarta.persistence.id. Click Finish. Next, I'm going to add getter setter for all these columns. We can go to source, generate getters and setters, select all, generate. Control S. After product, we need the repository. Control N, class is selected. Click next. Package, I'm going to add repository. Name, I'm going to provide product repository. Although I selected class, ideally it should be an interface. Click on finish, changing this class to interface, and this one should extend the JPA repository interface. Using this JPA repository from Spring Framework, here we need to provide the entity and the ID. Entity should be product. For ID, I was using long data type, so mentioning long over here. Repository is complete. Now we need to add the service class, product service. Same strategy, Control N, class is selected. Next, package, I'm going to change to service. Name, product service. So, first thing, we should add a service annotation over here. And we need the repository to be instantiated over here. We are going to use constructor injection. So first declaring the field, the product repository, Ctrl Shift O so that it gets resolved. Now we are going to initialize this with the help of constructor injection. Next, with the help of this repository, we are going to create all the service level methods for the CRUD operations. So I have just added the required methods and resolved the imports. Here, if you notice, we have all the CRUD operation related methods, get all products where we are using repository.findAll, get product by ID, we are using product repository.find by ID, save product using save, update product. Here first we are updating the ID, then saving the entire product object that is passed to it. And at the end, we have the delete product where we are deleting by ID. So far we have developed model, repository and service. Let's add the controller. Control N, class, next. Package I'm changing to controller. Name I'm adding as product controller. Click finish. As we required this repository inside the service, similarly we need the service here inside the controller. First, let me define this as a REST controller, @REST controller, and then I'll add a request mapping. This should be /API/products. Here I need the service to be used. First, I'm declaring the variable for product service. Let me resolve the import, and then I need to initialize this with constructor injection. Now, for all these CRUD operations, the associated methods we would add in the controller. Why we need the controller? From service, we are using the repository and we are performing the operations in the database. Now, when it's a REST endpoint, we are actually sending the response back to the browser or to the invoker. Here, we would send the body of the message as well as the status code. So I'll add the 4 methods associated to this REST endpoints and I'll explain the details. You will understand what additional thing we are doing on the controller apart from exposing the methods as APIs. So here I have added all the methods and resolved the import issues. If I maximize this, first one is the default get. So if I hit this particular URL like localhost colon 8080 then API then products, this should be invoked. It is get all products. Here using the service, I'm calling the method getAllProduct. Similarly, get mapping, it's something API slash products, then slash, then ID. What we are doing here, when we are telling that, okay, I'm passing the ID, give me one product. Internally, we have created this get product by ID. Based on the ID, we are invoking this service classes get product by ID. And here, as we get one optional value, from there we are trying to get the value, and if we find this, then it's setting the status code as okay. Otherwise, it is sending the status code not found. In case of okay, the status code should be 200. In case of not found, it should be 404. So we are sending the response entity. Inside that, the message body would be of the product, but along with that, we are sending the status codes also. So this is something additional we are doing on top of the data that is the product service is sending back to us. So this was a get mapping. For create, it's a post mapping. We are getting the request body. From there, whatever details we are getting for a product, accordingly, we are creating that in our backend database. For update, we are getting the ID. We are also getting the request body where we have the details of the product. If that particular product is not available, we are sending not found. Otherwise, we are updating it, and also we are sending back the product along with the status code as okay. For delete, similarly, we are just receiving the ID of the product. If the product does not exist, we are sending not found, which is 404. If the product is there, then first we are deleting the product and we are only sending the status code of no content. Here, in case of delete, we have the delete mapping, and you can see within response entity it is void. But in case of update, which is the put mapping, here we are sending the product as well. It's not void. We are sending the response body as well as the status code. So now we have all four of these created, starting from model, then repository, then service, then product controller. As a next step, we need to configure the H2 database and update our application.properties file accordingly. If I go to resources, I have the application.properties file. Here, Spring application name is added. Let me add the H2 database related configurations over here. If you notice here, this is the URL H2 in-memory version I'm using over here, and the database name is testdb. I have mentioned the driver class name, the username as SA, password I'm keeping as empty, added the dialect, the console is enabled, and this is the console path. So H2 database related details are added. For insertion of sample data, there could be multiple approaches. In this lesson, I'm going to use command line runner for programmatic data insertion. Now, why I am using command line runner? Command line runner has a specific method called run, which gets invoked once the Spring Boot application is loaded. In this specific case, what we want, as we are using in-memory H2DB, no data will be available in the database at the application startup. Even if we save in the next run, the data would be gone. So what we want here, whenever the application gets started, it should create a certain table and insert some dummy records over there so that we can perform the operations on top of the tables and we don't face any issue. So for dummy data insertion, let me create one utility class, data initializer. Click on Ctrl N, select class, next, typing the name data initializer. Package I'm adding to config, a new package. Click finish. Now this one should be a component, and this would be implementing the command line runner. Once I implement command line runner, there would be one issue. I need to implement the method as well. So select this add unimplemented methods. Here what I would do, using the product repository that we have, I would create two product objects, and using the repository, I'm going to save it in the database. Initialize this with constructor injection. Now inside run, we need to create two product objects and perform the save for them. Now here, one thing you would notice, we don't have this parameterized constructor in the product class. I can go to this product class. Just after this default constructor, I can have a parameterized constructor. Go to source, generate constructor using fields. I don't need the ID, only the name, description, and price. Click on generate, save it. Going back to data initializer, the error is gone. Now coding wise, everything is done. We need to build this sample application using Maven, and then we would run, and finally we would perform the testing with Postman. Build this application using Maven, right click, run as, select this third option, Maven build. Under goal, I'm mentioning clean and package. As I don't need the testing part, I'm checking this skip tests option. click apply, click run. Build is successful. Now I'm going to run this Spring CRUD REST application.java. Right click, run as Java application. Application is started. For testing with Postman, we are going to test the following: the post API, the get API, the post API for adding records or creating records, get API for fetch all by ID, for put it would be updating of the records, and for delete we would remove one sample record. Here I have this Postman open. I'm just going to click on this plus icon. First, I'm going to invoke the get method. Let me add the URL over here. So it should be localhost 8080/API/products. If I go back to Eclipse and go to the controller here, let me minimize this. This is the one we are referring to. Let me open one specific view over here. Window, show view, other, select Spring symbols. If you notice this over here, whatever we added in the controller, they are listed pretty nicely over here. We have this get, post, delete, another get, all these details are there. And if I click accordingly, those methods would be selected in the code. So let me first test with this /API products, which is get. Going back to Postman, get URL is ready, nothing else is needed. Click on send. Let me maximize this a little bit. Here we can see two products are ready. So that sample data insertion, whatever code we wrote in the data initializer, it inserted two products, product 1 and product 2 with 100 and 200 with values 100 and 200. We can see those values over here. So we are done with the get operation. Now I want to fetch a single product. If I go back to Eclipse under Spring symbol, I have this products, then ID. So let me just change this slash any ID I can send 1. It should give me the first product. This is also working. Next, we have this create. So for this, we need post. Let me create a new request over here, clicking on this plus, changing this to post. If I go to headers, I need content type. And this should be application/JSON. Let me just type JSON. And inside the body, we need to send a text which is equivalent to the JSON structure of the product. Clicking on raw, by default JSON is selected. If not, you can select it over here and select JSON. Here I'm going to add a JSON structure for this product. So I'm adding the JSON over here, name product 3, description this is product 3, price 33. Need to add the URL also over here. Let me just copy. Should be products only. Let me cross verify from Eclipse. This post, there should not be any slash. Going back here, click send. I have the status code as 200. It is sending me the created product. I can cross check by going here and just run this by removing this ID. Now it should give me 3 products. Clicking on send, I have ID 1, ID 2 and ID 3, the one that we just created. If I go back to Eclipse, another thing we have is this put where we update, and also we have this delete. First, let me update. Going back here, this is the post. I can change it to put. And here I need to provide one ID which I want to change. This is 3. Under header, I have content type application/JSON. I'm just editing the post actually. Under body for 3, I want to change product 3 as product 3 changed, and price I'm changing to 44 instead of 33. URL is given, ID is appended, and this is the JSON. Click on send. This got changed. There is a typo. Anyways, ignore it. Description is there. Price is there. Let me go back here to this get. Let me bring all the products. 3 products should be there. And the last one should have the change. We can see the change is reflected over here. Price is also 44. Now we are going to perform a delete operation. For delete, I need to just change it to delete. And here I need to mention the ID number over here. Let me delete the third one. Click on send. We can see the status 204. Now going back to get, click on send. We should get only 2 products now. The third one should be gone. So things are working as expected. We have created a simple CRUD-based application and exposed all the CRUD operations as REST endpoints from our Spring Boot application. The code I have written over here, I would share it in GitHub and add the link in the YouTube description. In case you have found this lesson useful, please like and subscribe to my channel. If possible, I would request you to add some comment with your feedback or suggestion for new video ideas. Thanks a lot for your time.